the doing it, how to execute it. Okay, because in the previous chapter we have talked about Incoterm, we have talked about term of payment, which are two of the most important information that you need in international deal. In international deal, okay, when you deal with someone, okay, internationally, especially in international trade, in international trade. Of course, you will have to deal about the price, you will have to deal about the product, about the specification, about the lead time. All those things are being done by being negotiated between you and the the other party, whether you are a seller or you are a buyer. Okay, but from my perspective, I mean, from my experience, I have to be honest with you that from my experience, I am the buyer. I always am the buyer. I have never been the exporter before. So from the perspective that I have in international trade, from my experience in business, I only have experience in the perspective of exporter of importer, or from the perspective of buyer. So from the perspective of buyer, again, when you deal with the seller, when you deal with the supplier, all the details have to be laid down, has to be listed. All the details have to be listed. What kind of product are we talking about? What kind of options that we are talking about? What are the specific details that you will need to talk about? Don't overlook anything. Don't ignore anything. Because in international trade, documents are very important. It will act as the contract. So every details have to be listed. Every details have to be listed. For example, if you order raw materials from your supplier, list everything. What is the specification? What is the dimension? What the package look like? Down into the material of the packaging. Do not ignore anything. And this is from my own experience. This is from my own experience. Those are very, very important. Sometimes a lot of people, I mean, I have made huge mistakes before. I mean, I made mistakes. That's why I don't want you guys to make this, to repeat the mistakes that I made. For raw materials, sometimes we did not go deep down into details about the type of the packaging materials, because most of the time we don't think it is important. But when those products or those materials are being transported internationally in the container, everything is important, because they who have to be transported in the ocean for a very long time. And sometimes the weather can be very harsh. I mean, in the middle of the ocean in summer, the temperature inside the container could go up to 50 or 60 degrees Celsius. Okay, and the humidity can be ranging from really humid to really dry. It depends on the area that the ship has passed. So everything has to be declared. On the other hand, if you order machines, okay, I have ordered machineries before, a lot of machines from the suppliers, from the sellers in Japan, in Germany, and in China. Okay, so all the specifications have to be specified. Do not overlook anything. Even you have negotiated with the seller, even you have agreed with the seller, if you have even you have agreement with the sellers that okay, I will get this, check the documents again. check the documents again. Do not overlook anything. Do not ignore anything. It will take you only a few hours. But we are talking about millions here. Machineries are expensive. Check again. Check all the details documents. Check all the details documents. And once you check all the details documents, there are two more things that you need to consider. The first one, the most important one, term of payment. Term of payment. From the perspective of buyer, most of the time the seller would ask for letter of credit, which is not a bad thing, okay? Which is not very risky. It's actually quite a good thing. But for letter of credit, okay, I'm not talking about chapter 11 here. I'm just repeating chapter 10. So please bear with me a few seconds. But for letter of credit, in order for the bank to release the money, they would need complete document. They would need complete document. So documentation is also important. Check the document. When the seller sent you the invoice, most of the time you will deal with pro forma invoice. I'm not quite familiar with commercial invoice because it's a very long form. Usually we are dealing with pro forma invoice. Check the pro forma invoice again, because those are the documents that will be attached to the letter of credit. Okay. Every document is important. Every document is important. Okay. And the last thing that you need to negotiate when making a deal with your supplier is the Incoterm. The Incoterm. Remember the Incoterm. If you go back to the previous chapter, Incoterm tells you when the responsibility of the exporter ends and when the responsibility of the importer begins. This is a huge thing. This is a huge thing because it will indicate the responsibility of each party. And if you have worked or have any experience in working in the ocean liner or like logistics company, you would see that most of the time you would have to deal with FOB. Okay. Freight on board. Okay, FOB. But as I told you last time, you don't need to memorize all the Incoterm. That would be the waste of your brain cell. Okay, and especially in this class, you take exam at home anyway, so you don't need to memorize anything. But please at least know what we are talking about. Please at least know that I highly recommend CIF. Why is it? Because your responsibility as a buyer will begin in the port of destination, which means Bangkok seaport, which is quite safe. And the seller also pay for the insurance. So in this case, you don't have to pay for the insurance by yourself. Okay, your responsibility begins when the product have reached Bangkok seaport. And you pay, of course, you have to pay for the import tax, import duty, and the transportation from the Bangkok seaport to your factory. Okay. I mean, if you can negotiate for DDP term, it would be the best one, but I doubt it would be possible for any seller to go for DDP. Okay. That's my recommendation on international trade. Okay. That's my recommendation. Okay. I'm not just talking about transportation itself. I'm talking about the whole international trade thing. Okay, when you make a deal, don't forget, don't forget what I say. Okay, one day in the near future, especially you guys who have business at home, especially for you guys who will be taking over your parents' business in a few years, please don't forget what I told you. Okay, I have made mistakes before. Don't repeat my mistake. Okay, it's some mistakes should not be repeated. Okay, but of course, in real working life, you will make mistake. Okay, nobody is perfect. You will make mistake, but just don't repeat my mistake. Whatever I have made, what mistakes I have made before, I just told you. Okay, so please don't repeat it. All right, then that's the summary of chapter 10. Okay, that's the summary of chapter 10. Now let's begin chapter 11, global transportation execution. Okay, today we will be talking about the global transportation execution of the sea mode, okay, of the water mode. And then next time we will talk about the air mode, and then we'll have some time left for the presentation. Okay, that's my plan today. So global freight transportation services. Okay. So global transportation, the journey The journey usually involves multiple carriers from different modes. Okay, and when you deal with multiple carriers and multiple modes, there are risks of disruption, there are risks of delay, and there are risks of many other problems. Those risks are getting higher when there are more transfer. Those risks are getting higher when there are more carriers. The risks are getting higher when there are more modes of transportation. Okay. Again, usually global transportation involves multiple carriers, multiple modes. However, there are some markets, there are some segment of global freight transportation that do not have to deal with multiple modes and multiple carrier. We call it single mode, single carrier, or direct service, or direct service. Okay, direct service, single mode, single carrier. From the seller to the customer, from the seller's factory to the customer's factory. Direct service. Only involve one mode, one carrier. No stop, no transfer. You use truck to move across the land border. And you can see that in between here, there's an import clearance. That's an import clearance. The example would be transportation of freight from Bangkok to Vientiane or Vientiane, to Vientiane or Vientiane in the Laos PDR, okay, in Laos, from Bangkok, Thailand to Laos PDR, okay. And this direct service would be used only for neighboring countries, neighboring countries. Usually we are talking about neighboring countries, direct service, okay. Single mode, direct service. Do not confuse it with the train that runs in the Silk Road. Do not confuse it with the train that runs in the Silk Road. Those trains are called direct train from China to Europe. Those are direct train, but they are not direct service because somehow you need to transfer. You need to transfer from the truck to train. And then at the destination, you also need to transfer from train to trucks. Those are not direct service. Even they are called direct train. Again, the direct train from China to Europe in the One Belt, One Road project or in the New Silk Road project of the President Xi Jinping, those are not direct service. Even they are called direct train because they are involving more than one mode of transportation. There will be truck transportation from the factory to the train station and then move the container from the truck to the train. And then at the country of destination, for example, in Germany, there will be trucks to unload the freight from the train to the truck and drive to the destination, to the factory in Germany, for example. So do not confuse it with those One Belt, One Road project, okay? So those are direct service for neighboring countries, okay? Only one mode, single mode of transportation. And then we have indirect service that we have to deal with multiple modes and multiple carriers, multiple modes and multiple carriers, okay? We're talking about long distance transportation, usually between continents, usually those distance could not be directly accessible by one mode. Those freight flows tends to be slow because of stops and transfer of freight between carriers, between modes. The most obvious example would be my company's example when we buy something from abroad. Okay, so the seller is in Osaka, Japan. The buyer is in Bangkok, Thailand. Okay, so my supplier who is in Osaka would have to transfer or transport the machines from Osaka factory using truck from the factory in Osaka to Osaka port. In Osaka port, the containers will have to be unloaded and loaded, unloaded from the truck and loaded to the ocean liner or to the ship. Okay. At this point, they will have to pay the export tax, okay, the export tax or the export duty if there is any. Okay. And then the ship will be moving from Osaka port to Bangkok port or Klong Toi port. Okay, Bangkok Klong Toi port. Okay, to unload and pay for import tax. And then transfer those containers to the trucks to be delivered to my company in Bangkok. Okay, so it sounds not so slow, only two transfers, but sometimes paperwork makes it difficult. Especially paperwork in Thailand, you know how things work in Thailand when we deal with government agency. Many times things are slow. Okay. So intermodal transportation or transportation using more than one mode involve the use of two or more modes of transport in moving shipment from origin to destination. Now you know that already. You should know that by now. Okay. It facilitates global trade by combining each mode advantages. Of course, truck is accessible. Ship can transport large volume and it's not expensive. Or you can use truck, which is also accessible, plus air, which is fast and reliable for the product that needs fast delivery. Okay. Great accessibility by linking the individual mode. Again, truck is accessible. Okay, truck is accessible. Cost efficiency, of course, you can use many modes of transportation to be connected to each other. Think about the case that I just told you, the One Belt, One Road project of President Xi Jinping. They combine truck mode with the direct train mode from China to Europe. They are cost efficiency because it's cheaper and it takes shorter time. Okay. This is just an example of intermodal transportation option. It can be any option. At pickup and delivery, usually we're talking about trucks. Okay, at pickup and delivery, we're talking about trucks. But in between, it can be train, like in the One Belt, One Road project. It can be ocean liner or ship, or it can be airplane. Most of the time for express delivery, customers don't care what mode you're using as long as the products arrive on time. But most of the time you use airplane anyway for express delivery. But customers really don't care what mode you're using. If you promise to deliver their product within 3 days, for example, if you promise to deliver the products within 3 days, customer would expect that in the next 3 days, the products will be delivered. They don't care what model of airplane you use, whether you use airplane, whether you use trucks, whether you use train. They don't care as long as they are delivered on time. Okay. Intermodal freight. Okay. There are two categories of freight types. Okay. There are two categories of freight types based on transportation. Okay. The first one is called containerized freight. Okay. Containerized freight. Freights are loaded into regular container. Okay. Those regular containers can be lifted, can be stacked, can be moved using standard equipment. With the standardization of containers today, which means containers have standard. You cannot build a container that have the dimension that you like. No, you cannot do that. You have to follow standard because those containers will be stacked on top of each other, will have to be combined with the other containers in the ship. Okay, so it needs standard. Okay, it means that it is possible to use your equipment to transport other companies' containers and vice versa, which means other companies' equipment can also be used to transport your container. And container has a unit of TEU. We have already talked about this, but just in case you forget, okay, container has a unit of TEU. TEU is 20-foot equivalent unit. So if we are talking about 20-foot container, 20-foot long container, one 20-foot long container is equal to 1 TEU. Again, one 20-foot container equal to 1 TEU. one 40-foot long container equal to 2 TEU. Okay, equal to 2 TEU. This is a standard unit of container that are being used worldwide. This is the unit that is used worldwide. And if you just happen to read logistics news, you will be, you will be facing the unit TEU somehow. Okay, for example, like a few years ago when the government decided to expand Lam Chabang port, to expand the capacity of Lam Chabang port, they decided to expand the capacity of Lam Chabang port to be able to handle a certain number of TEU per year. So this is an international unit. Even you read like กรุงเทพธุรกิจ or ไทยรัฐ or whatever newspaper that you read, you will see this unit. Okay. And you can see that the growth in containerization is going up. The trend is going up. And as we discussed last time, we don't know yet whether 2021 will be better or worse than 2020. Of course, in 2020, the trend has gone down because we had the pandemic. But in 2021, which is this year, we have to wait until the end of this year to find out what is going to happen. But we don't know whether it's going to come up or whether it's going to go down again. But I hope that there will be some growth in 2021. Okay. So containerization growth has enabled what? New generation of ocean vessel, rail car, and truck trailers can handle intermodal container. We are talking about flat car, right? We're talking about flat car in the in rail mode. We are talking about containerized freight. We are talking about container ship, container vessel. Okay. So this is the regular specification of the container. This is the regular container. It has 20-foot and 40-foot specification. For high cube container, this is it's called high cube because its height is higher than the regular container. Okay, there are 40-foot and 45-foot standard. Okay, but usually we are dealing with 20-foot and 40-foot containers. There are somehow the usage of 10-foot long container, but those are being designed for use in military only. For regular freight, for regular commercial containers, we are dealing with 20 and 40-foot containers. Okay, but for military use, they use 10-foot container for some reasons that I don't know. I really have no idea why the military use 10-foot container. Probably the easier to transport or something, but I really have no idea. But they are being used by the military only, not even available for the regular commercial use. Okay. Container identification system. Okay, container identification system. Okay, I would like you to focus on this. We may have already discussed about this, but let's talk about it again. Okay, let's focus on this. Okay. Maximum weight means the weight of container plus the weight of the freight that it carries. Okay, container weight is fixed. Okay, 3,870 kilograms. Payload weight means the maximum weight that it can carry. Maximum weight that this container can carry. Okay, this is operational characteristic. This is the one that I would like you to focus on. Okay. Because if you work in this field, you would have to deal with this, with the payload weight. Sometimes you can fill in the container, but your products or your freight may be heavier than its payload weight. If that's the case, you need to remove freight out of container. Even you can fit everything inside. But if the weight is higher, if the weight of your freight is higher than the payload weight that it can carry, you have to remove some of your freight out of the container. Otherwise, the container will be destroyed. They will have a problem, okay? Because that's the maximum weight that it can handle. Okay, that's the maximum weight that this container can handle. All right, next, let's talk about intermodal routing. Intermodal routing. What does it mean, intermodal routing? Okay, I use the map of the US because it's quite obvious. Okay, it's quite obvious. On the left side of the US is Pacific Ocean. On the right side of the US is the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, so usually, okay, this is the Mexico and Panama and some other countries in South America. Okay, the land has connected like this. Okay, so when you want to move freight from the left side of the US to the right side of the US, usually you would use Panama Canal. If you can still remember when I showed you the video of Panama Canal. Usually they will use Panama Canal when you want to move freight from the left to the right. Okay. However, if you want to avoid the usage of Panama Canal, there is another concept called the land bridge concept. The land bridge concept. You use land as the bridge. You use land as the bridge, which means that the ship will dock at this point at the left side of the country, and then you unload the freight and use the train to travel to another side of the country. And then you unload freight from train to another ship at this point. This concept is called land bridge. It's called land bridge. You use land as a bridge. Okay. Again, unload at point A. Okay. Move your freight to train, and the train travel from point A to point B. And then you unload your freight and from the train and load back to the ship, and then the ship move to another place. This is a concept of land bridge. Okay. There are two more concepts, however. We call it mini bridge and micro bridge Okay. The only difference here, okay, let me explain it to you. The concept of mini bridge, okay, this is point C, okay, point C. You unload the freight from the ship at point C and load freight to the train at point C. And then the freight will move from point C to point D, dock, okay? And then you unload the freight at point D dock. The freight will be used at point D dock. Okay. This is a concept of mini bridge. What's the difference here? Okay, instead of the ship, okay, for the land bridge, instead of ship going through the Panama Canal and go on to another place, you use the land as the bridge to go on. On the other hand, for the concept of mini bridge, it means that the ship actually has to be docked here at point D, but instead you dock the ship at point C and use the rail car to transport to point D instead. Okay, this is a concept of mini bridge. Okay, another concept is micro bridge. Okay, micro bridge. Okay, point E and point F here. Micro bridge means you dock the ship at point E, and then you use the train or truck to move freight to point F, which is the inland area. Okay. Okay, that's the concept of land bridge. That's the concept of land bridge. Okay. Now, global transportation execution. Okay. This is a big picture for freight movement. In this slide is the big picture for freight movement from the seller to the customer. Okay, seller will have to prepare freight, pack the freight, prepare all the document, insure the freight, and then move freight from the factory of the seller to port, and then from port to port, and then from the port of destination. At the port of destination, you have to clear custom. You have to pay for import duty. You have to pay for the value added tax. You have to pay for the fee at the port. Okay. So this is a big picture for freight movement. Okay. So to prepare for freight movement, first you have to pack your product. You have to pack your product, pack your freight. However, in international or global transportation, when you move freight across ocean, when you move freight across borders, there are risks in loss and delay. Okay, those risks cannot be ignored. The precaution must be taken because you cannot assume that container can prevent everything. No, container cannot prevent everything. There may be the problem of breakage because during the container transfer, container can drop and collide or chon with each other during loading and unloading. It is important to use protective packing. And you need to pack the carton or the boxes as tightly as possible. You need to pack the boxes together as tightly as possible. Okay, that's for breakage. And for moisture, a lot of people tend to overlook this moisture problem. A lot of people don't even realize that there will be the moisture problem because international water carrier travel from low humid to high humid, from high humid to low humid, from low to high, from high to low again. When you travel between high and low humid areas, it will cause precipitation inside the container. Precipitation orเกิดไอน้ำ precipitation inside the container. You need packing with moisture resistant material. You need packing with moisture resistant material. Basically, we're talking about plastic inside the carton, plastic inside the box, or you use shrink wrap or plastic wrap around the pallet to create moisture barrier. You use shrink wrap or plastic wrap around the pallet to create moisture barrier. The third potential problem is theft and pilferage. You should avoid writing or indicating the brand name of the product outside your container. Of course, you have to mark something to comply with the custom, right? Like customer info, seller information, cargo information, or something like that. But try to avoid using brand name. Okay. To limit awareness of the thieves. Okay. And then excess weight. Okay. Again, I have told you about the weight that each container can carry. Okay. So if you want to avoid this problem, you can use lightweight packing material. You can use lightweight packing material. or you can use professional packers. Those are the service that will be provided for you. Professional packers, they will use lightweight packing materials. Okay, but for air shipment, those packing materials should be less bulky. Okay, less bulky. You do not want like a really big package. Okay, because you will be charged based on dimension of the product also. Okay. After packing, you need to insure your product. You need to insure your product. Okay. We have already discussed this in details in the chapter 9. Again, insurance is risk transfer, if you can remember. Okay. And documentation. In the previous chapter, we have already talked about documents in details. So missing or incorrect paperwork can cause delays and additional cost. Because once the document has been issued, every time that you correct document, you will have to pay a fee. You have to pay a fee. Okay, so don't do that. Okay. Next step is move freight. Okay. Move freight. Global transportation market is served by carriers in all modes of transportation. For international or intercontinental, intercontinental or between continent, usually you use ocean and air. For intra-continental or within the same continent, like between neighboring countries, usually you use truck. Okay. As I just told you, between Bangkok and Laos, between Bangkok and Vientiane, which is the capital city of Laos. Okay, you use truck. Okay. So in ocean shipping, there are 3 service options. Okay, there are 3 service options. But ocean shipping itself is responsible for more than 90% of freight transportation based on volume. Okay. So we are talking about a huge market. We're talking about a huge market. More than 90% of products transportation intercontinental were being moved by ocean shipping. So it's a huge market. There are 3 main categories of ocean shipping. The first one is liner. Okay, liner. It's trade that serve a particular trade area, such as Trans-Pacific Line, Transatlantic Lines, Asia-Europe lines. Some liner ships travel on around the world schedule. So basically, we're talking about the types of boat or ship that are regularly scheduled, has a regular schedule. Regularly scheduled. With the fixed route. With the fixed route. With the predetermined port. It comes in different types and different size. They may have container. They may be break bulk. They may be a combination of both. Okay. So liner category of ocean transportation is basically like a public bus. They have regular schedule with fixed route, like a public bus. Okay. Of course, it's not a bus, it's a ship, but I'm trying to give you the idea of what it looks like public bus. Okay. They have regular schedule with fixed route with the predetermined port. Which port that it will be docked, which port that it will be leaving from. Okay, those are the liner option. Okay. The next category is called charter ship. Those charter ships are hired for a specific trip or the amount of specific amount of time. Okay, the specific amount of time. Basically, it's like taxi. Basically, it's like taxi. Okay, specific ship or specific amount of time. There are voyage charter, time charter, and demise charter. Okay, what's the difference between these three? Okay. By the way, in the charter option, if you read the news, okay, I just don't want you to confuse. Okay, the customer is called charterer. Don't ask me why. Ask the English. They're the one who comes up with the vocabulary. Okay, I don't know why they call it charterer, but that's how they call it. Okay, the customer is called charterer. Okay, now voyage charter. What is it? Voyage charter is when you hire the ship between loading and unloading port. Basically, you hire based on the distance between loading and unloading port. You can pay by ton or by negotiation. It depends on your negotiation. Okay, it depends on your negotiation. The next type of charter service is called time charter. You hire for a specific period of time. For example, 2 months, 3 months, and you pay fuel, you pay port charge, you pay daily rate, whatever you negotiate with them. But the difference between voyage charter and time charter is voyage charter, you pay for the distance of usage, like from Bangkok port to Osaka port. But in time charter, you pay for the specific amount of time. Specific amount of time. Okay. And the last one is called demise charter. Demise charter is the long lease. Okay, we call it long lease. You rent the boat for a long time. Basically, charterer will have control of the boat, have total control of the boat. In demise charter, you can rent the boat with the crew, or you can rent the boat only. When you rent boat only, it's called bareboat charter. Only boat, okay? When you rent only the boat, it's called bareboat charter. You rent only boat, and then the charterer will hire crews and captain by themselves. Okay. The last category of the ocean shipping is private ship. It means the company owns the ship. For example, PTT, okay? PTT or PTT, okay? They use their own boat to export, they to transport the oil to other countries. Now, there are several types of equipment in ocean shipping. There are several types of equipment in ocean shipping. Mostly ships fly a flag of convenience. What is flag of convenience? Okay, the ship has to be registered somewhere. The same as your car. Okay, not most, but many of your car are registered in Bangkok. But if you're from other province, you would have to register in that province. But it doesn't matter, right? You can have the address in Chiang Mai, and you can drive the car that has the Bangkok plate without any problem. Because you bought this car in Bangkok, you register it in Bangkok. Or you can drive it back to Chiang Mai and re-register and have a new plate in Chiang Mai. It doesn't matter. The same way as the ship. But in international ship, you have to register your ship in the country, in any country. Most of the time, most of the time you would register your ship in the country that you get most benefit, not the country of your home port. For example, if your boat is, I mean, if you are a US company, if you are an American company, you may not want to register your ship in the US because in the US there are a very long list of regulations for ocean liner that you have to follow. On the other hand, if you register it in the Bahamas, the list is shorter. You pay smaller fee. You don't have to be, you don't have to follow a very long list of regulations. Even, for example, Disney Cruise. You know Disney, right? Disney is a US company. They have their own cruise. Disney Cruise is not registered their own boats in the US because they want to fly flag of convenience. Flag means the national flag. Okay, they call flag of convenience means register where they get most benefit. Okay. And there are container ships, break bulk ships, roll on, roll off, bulk carrier, and combination ship. The first one is container vessel. Container vessel is popular. It's popular because intermodal connection. It requires less time to load and unload. With the standard equipment, you can load and unload those ships very quickly. Okay. Next one is break bulk ship. It's not container ship, so it takes time to load and unload. But the advantage here is you can ship unusual size product. You can ship unusual size product. The products that are bigger than container. Then there are roll on, roll off ship. Roll on, roll off ship is most of the time used to transport cars. They have like the bridge from the ship that can transport cars. The cars can be driven in and out of this ship. That's why it's called roll on, roll off ship. Okay. Now rate structure. Okay, rate structure. And we are talking about liner only. Okay, we are talking about liner only because in private you pay for your own. In charter it is based on negotiation, but for liner, okay, the cost structure is mostly fixed. Okay, mostly fixed cost. 80-90% of total cost is fixed cost. Okay, and they travel in fixed route no matter how much the cargo they carry. So the fuel is fixed, the labor is fixed. Okay. And current issue in intercontinental transportation, in ocean transportation, is limited potential route because not every port can handle really big container ships. The trend right now is they want to increase the size of the container ship. They want to increase the size of the container ship because they want to carry more per trip. But the problem is not every port can handle this size of ship. And the problem of port congestion. With the ship this big, when you dock the ship, there is a lot of containers for you to load and unload. Okay. And then the next problem is load factor. You need to carry a lot of containers in order to justify the size of the ship. Okay. And then Ocean Carrier Alliance, or the forming of alliance from several companies. They form alliance. To provide better service to the customers or to save their own cost, for example. Okay. Because sometimes so many companies are sailing in the same route, but not a lot of customers are using it. So sometimes they just share load into one chip. Okay. And then the last issue is e-shipping enable process. That's why I asked one group to do the presentation on using blockchain in international shipping. It is very important right now. Okay. All right, that's it for the boat, for the ocean mode. Okay. Next time we will talk about international air mode of transportation. It's time for Q&A. Do you have any question? Any question at all? Any of you guys? If you do have question, please ask. Okay, if you do have question, please ask. But if you do not have any question, you can leave now.
Thank you ค่ะ